was the next.
Great one,
Well,
man.
actually happened to be one of the few songs I didn't like at the time.
At the time.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler.
But
one of the things you
that's
hear me
the
talk
sweet
about
spot
frequently
when you're
on my
14
radio.
years old.
Yeah.
For me, I had older brothers, so it started a little bit earlier. Speaking of, I never had a younger brother, and I'm really having fun with Mac. I literally, no, not joking, I got him in trouble with Mandis, and it was a blast. Did you see the filthy look he gave you?
He did.
Don't let him intimidate you.
Uh-oh.
Mandis? No intimidation.
No, I mean,
What happened?
Well, I convinced Dan that, I do my best not to talk about sports. And, I got Mac in my ear. Don't do this interview. Let's talk sports instead.
That's not true.
And he wheeled around and gave Mac the filthiest look.
The glare.
So I was thinking maybe we should start the whole show with March Madness. Maybe I'll go into my Jim Nance if we have the CBS music. But yeah, that was like, I've never gotten a stink eye like that.
Underneath the glasses and all, he
of course,
tilted the head.
Stink eye.
And I'm completely lying. I mean,
Of course.
now I know why my brothers loved getting me in trouble.
yeah.
It really is fun. March Madness in full swing. I know that you're excited about Boise.
Boise State. Boise State.
Boise will play
Northwestern.
Northwestern. That'll be in primetime. That should be primetime CBS. Along with, as you notice, I'm wearing my Vols hat. We've got Louisiana Lafayette.
I got a power tee on too. Let's go.
Primetime, you got a number one Houston matchup. You've got Kansas number one playing early today against Howard.
Ooh, better look out, Howard.
Yeah, that won't be fun.
Bama has Texas A&M Corpus Christi at 145. I don't see any threat to the ones.
Nope.
What about the twos? What about Arizona and Princeton? Did something strange happen there? I also marked, because we have a lot of Auburn fans, Auburn and I will be about 550. That's close to
That's going to be such a good game.
That's close to Wheel of Fortune. That could be a problem in my home. I got to be honest with you. If you in Kansas, of course, I filled out my bracket, and it all came down to Purdue and Kansas, and I went, why not two in a row for Bill Self, who happens to be a personal friend, hoping his ticker can handle the madness of March.
Yeah.
I got the Jayhawks going all the way. They're at 1 o'clock against Howard. I don't see any ones in threat today.
Doesn't Purdue have like 2 7-footers?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think Purdue is the obvious pick, don't you? But I just can't bring myself to respect the Big Ten in anything. Quite frankly, anything. See Michigan in the football playoffs. But I'll tell you what I'm most excited about. Are you ready for this? And I never, living in Oklahoma for 22 years, people don't know this, but I had a previous marriage in my early 20s to the head cheerleader of the Oklahoma Sooners.
Nice.
So I have ties that go back to
All
OU. So I was a
right.
big OU fan. And then I mentioned this the other day because you don't love OU and OSU. You pick one usually. But I used to speak the most at OSU. They would invite me to campus to speak. And I was thoroughly convinced, by the way, that Oklahoma State had the best-looking girls.
They do have pretty girls.
I mean, like something's in the water.
Yeah.
It's like, do they not allow anybody unless they're gorgeous? I'm sorry, we really like your ACT. Your GPA looks great, but you don't look so great. We're going to send you to OU. But, I fell in love with Big Country and Eddie Sutton's son.
Big Country, Bryant Reeves.
That was one of the
Sean
great.
Sutton.
Sean was like a coach at point guard. I mean, that was just a great
That
basketball
was a good team.
They suckered me in. But I never, ever even blinked or thought of ORU, which Coach Self would have a problem with. That's
Yeah,
where
he
he
would.
played and coached originally. But I am really excited about ORU. And I'll tell you, I'm so excited. I believe, and everybody's going to accuse me. Now, if I'm wrong, you'll play this clip tomorrow and call me. I think ORU is going to knock off Duke today.
I think they are,
wait.
too.
I cannot wait for that matchup. Of all the great games, because, the mismatches of 1 versus 16s, you can't get excited about it. Next week, you get in the Sweet 16, and every game's pure.
Yeah.
But out of all of them, I know you're looking for Boise against Northwestern. I'm waiting to watch ORU and Duke. March Madness is here. And I don't know what sounds more fun, like skipping out of work and going to, a little corner
Yes.
pub.
Yeah.
Have
Yes.
yourself a little sandwich and watch a ball game and sneak out of the second half of work, or
Yes.
prime time tonight, not having to. Now, by the way, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with this, but if you're thinking, I can't watch tonight, Grey's is on, you might be gay.
Grey's.
I'm just saying. If Grey's Anatomy
Oh,
is
Grey's Anatomy.
if you're like, I don't know if I can watch Grey's Anatomy tonight. Well, all right. But for the rest of us, this bails us out. Something on television to watch tonight. And every game will match. And like I always say, you just never know what Cinderella's going to appear.
You never know.
What
man.
drama's going to be. And something told me heading into this that there was going to be just something special. Who is ORU? Oral Roberts University. It's located in Tulsa University. Sorry.
I think they're going to get their butts whooped.
He also built a 70-story or 71-floor
Prayer
medical
tower.
building because God, or 77, right?
Yeah, 77.
Because God told him to do it. And
Yep.
I don't think they ever filled 2 floors with patients.
Don't know.
That was the famous when he wouldn't come out of the prayer tower and so
right.
people gave, right?
Yes,
Wasn't it?
He needed $77,000.
Wow.
And I think
Now,
he got it.
Let me tell you something. I don't want to say anything negative about television evangelists. And I certainly don't want to blaspheme the Holy Spirit, but I'd say, look, if you're going to go TV evangelist, give me a Jim Baker. I like a show. That's me.
Yeah.
You know, give me a Tonight Show. Sell me an amusement park. I like to be really swindled.
Give me a Robert Tilton any day.
Oh, my God. The Robert Tilton. We should play that for Mac. The Robert Tilton fart tape. Remember when that was viral? And that's back during VCRs.
Yeah.
Can you imagine what the Robert Tilton fart tape would have done in a modern social media setting? How did that? Somebody made a tape because Robert Tilton would always hear from God, and
He would start.
so somebody put fart sound effects
Yeah.
to all his faces. He was one of the great television crooks.
Oh yeah, he.
But I don't know how that VCR got made, and a VCR tape went viral. Remember, it would just show up at your radio
Yes.
station. Everybody go in the conference room
and watch it.
and laugh until you peed your pants. Now that's something. If Larry King had appeared in my sleep tomorrow morning, yes, Larry, you're not going to do the news. No, you're going to do Robert Tilton fart tape. By the way, it's still going around heaven in cassette form. Oh, by the way, yes, Larry. Everything's beta in heaven. Never thought I'd do Larry King today either.
Or talk about beta in heaven.
Grey's Anatomy is a rerun tonight. Corey the Yard Boy. See? Very, very, very revealing for Corey the Yard Boy,
Brother
who, by the way,
Corey.
took the loss of his high school team worse than the high school team took the
Boy,
loss.
he did. And you know what, though? I
was busy yesterday. I didn't have time to talk him off the ledge, but what I wanted to say was I need some mulch and mow the lawn. Suddenly, this guy thinks he's Dick Enberg.
Well, he's attached to those kids now. He's been calling the game since the 7th grade.
Michael, I still have a VCR tape from when I was music director. Music director where? At a radio station or a church? I never went to temple. Yeah, that's the secret. Universalism. I got here anyway. Or maybe he didn't get there, and that's why he's visiting me in my sleep.
It could be.
Well, as you can see, from getting Mac in trouble to getting myself in trouble by talking about March Madness before the show even starts, it's going to be... I never knew anyone who knew about the Tilton tape. Oh, Brad. Let me tell you something. In about 1994, 5, whatever
Yeah.
that was, I think everybody... I think it was like corporate would lay it down. From Cox Media Inc. to, I'm trying to think of what all the old Clear Channel to whatever they all were back then.
The big ones, yeah.
Yeah, they would give you their quarterly revenue report and a Tilton fart tape.
Yeah.
Please make sure the staff sees that. We could play some clips of it, but just Google Robert Tilton fart tape and watch it during the news break, Mac, and consider this a part of manhood. You're not ready for marriage until you laugh at the Robert Tilton fart tape. I just like the way Larry would have said it. The fart tape.
That's exactly how he would have said it.
Oh, by the way, in heaven, we've already got one of Don Lemon. But we're not showing it to just anybody. All right, let's see if I can get fired by noon. 9:14 at Super Talk, 99.7 WTN. The news was brought to you by... keep your family rolling. How about Jay Harper, by the way? I popped in on him earlier just to tell him I was driving to work. I think you sound terrific. And he gave me a wink. Then about 10 minutes later, he came back out. Should I know you? I felt like, like Johnny came in to say, hey, great job on that one. Great, thank you. 10 minutes later, should I know you? I'm Johnny Carson. But he sounds great. I mean, we love Jack Womack, and Jack's just taking some precious days off that he needs. But
That he deserves,
wow.
yeah.
Did Jay sound terrific today?
Jay sounds great.
Puffy Muffin Brentwood, you have 46 degrees, 46 to the north in Hendersonville, downtown on Music Row, partly cloudy skies, naked statues, 45 degrees at WTM. The Joe Biden market update, the Dow's down 286 at 31,588. The Nasdaq's down 26, the S&P's down 23, and everybody in the massage world said, Shank Shujo. I'm Michael DelGiorno for Loan Pronto. We love working with our veterans. And if you have a VA loan, in this housing market, homeowners with VA loans have access to a ton of instant cash to do a ton of really smart things with. I'm Michael DelGiorno for Loan Pronto, and if you need cash to pay off high-interest credit card debts or other high-interest loans, does a check for 80, 90 grand in your hand in 2 weeks sound good? Well, if you do something smart with it, it should. We're helping veterans every day get the money they need with a quick and easy zero-cost cash-out refi. And here's the other part, zero closing costs. With a VA loan, it's really cool because you can access up to 100% of your home's value. Use that money to pay off high-interest credit cards, HELOC loans, car loans, free up cash flow to afford inflation, get rid of all debt to prepare yourself for recession. Loan Pronto's all-new digital process makes it so fast and so easy. We're doing loans with super APRs, getting them done in 2 weeks, and we love working with our veterans. So call and see what your options are today. 499-5780. That's 499-5780. Online at loanpronto.com. Equal housing lender NMLS 1661781. Subject to lender approval. I do have two questions before I start being professional.
All right, Brother Michael.
Did I have Mac come into the studio a couple of days ago, take my shoe off, show him my fungus toe to see the stigmata of the cross?
Well, he didn't take your shoe off.
I took it off.
It was already off. But yeah,
that
you
happened.
did that.
And Larry King is a ghost. Just told my audience to watch the Robert Tilton fart tape.
On beta.
On beta. That happened.
Yes.
Yep.
You know, they're weaning me off antidepressants, and I'm kind of liking where it's going. All right, Joe Biden. I actually think, this is like in the weather world, they'll go, this is a severe weather warning. I repeat, a severe weather warning. This is up there with, I think, Corn Pop. Now, Corn Pop, I thought when it happened, this is Joe Biden early on the campaign trail before they hit him in a basement. at a black community pool with black people all standing around, staged campaign event, nobody listening to them, they're all talking. And Joe starts waxing on somewhere between Cross and the Switchblade and West Side Story. An old story about being at that pool as a lifeguard when some black guys tried to jump in the pool with their greasy hair. And he called them Esther Williams. Next thing you know, they were getting their blades sharpened. Back in the day, Joe's telling you the story, they would soak their blades in buckets so they'd get rusty when they cut you. And they went and got their blades, and they were sharpening them on the curb, waiting for old Joe to get off his shift. They were going to stab him. But Joe went downstairs under the pool with the black guy who cleaned the pool, and he told him to grab some chains if he's going to defend himself. And old Joe got out there with his chains to take on Corn Pop and his gang that he called Esther Williams and stop horsing around in the pool. And then at the last minute, Joe goes, now, before we fight, I want you to know I never should have called you Esther Williams. Now, I'll throw you out of the pool, and I'll throw you out of the pool again if you do what you were doing. But I never should have called you Esther Williams. And that's when the gang, thirsty for a fight, thirsty for blood, just slowly lowered their chains. Because Joe apologized to him. I mean, he's just waxing on. Is this West Side Story? Is this Cross and the Switchblade? Is this a senile old man just making crap up? Yes, but it was entertaining. And I thought it could never get weirder than that. Until Joe sits down with Comedy Central's Daily Show host Cal Penn to discuss same-sex marriage. Oh, you got to turn me on.
I've been engaged for the last 5 years, which really only means that every auntie and uncle that I have is beyond disappointed that there hasn't been a wedding yet. But Cardi B is going to marry us, apparently officiate our wedding, which would...
By the way, I did not know Cal Penn was gay, nor do I care. It's not a big deal. But he got cut off. So Cal's explaining to the president that him and his boyfriend are engaged to be married. They haven't got married yet. To show you the seriousness of this ceremony, Cardi B is going to officiate it. This is a real covenant. But now he gets into his question to the president.
Which would be nice. But my question for you, Mr. President, is you codified support for same-sex marriage and interracial marriages like ours. I'm curious what your evolution was like on marriage equality and what the federal government might be able to do to protect LGBTQ Americans, especially trans kids who are dealing with all these regressive state laws that are popping up right now.
Nothing biased by that question, of course.
I remember exactly where my epiphany was.
Okay.
I hadn't thought much about it, to tell you the truth. And I was a senior in high school, and my dad was dropping me off. I remember about to get out of the car, and I looked to my right, and two well-dressed men in suits kissed each other. I mean, they gave each other a kiss. And then one looked like he was heading to the DuPont building, and one looked like he headed to the Hercules Corporation building. And I'll never forget, I turned and looked at my dad. He said, Joey, it's simple. They love each other. It's simple. No, I'm not joking. It's simple. They love each other. And it's never been, it's never been, it's just that simple. It doesn't.
Does anybody really believe for a second that in 1960 in Scranton, Pennsylvania, they were businessmen in full suits making out in the middle of the street before they head into their office buildings, number one. Number two, does anybody believe that in 1960 that would have been done in a public display and a father would have turned to his senior in high school future president and said, Joey, it's simple. They love each other, Joey. Joey, they love each other. And then there's this unfortunate thing. If you think I'm picking on the president, here's the president as a senator.
Here's Biden from 2006. We already have a law, the Defense of Marriage Act, where we've all voted, not where I voted and others said, look, marriage is between a man and a woman, and states must respect that. Nobody's violated that law. There's been no challenge to that law. Why do we need a constitutional amendment?
So we're to believe he had epiphany in the street in Scranton with his dad as a senior watching two businessmen kiss, and his father says, Joey, it's as simple as love, Joey. It's just love. And then 46 years later as a senator, he angrily is defending marriage between a man and a woman.
Marriage is between a man and a woman.
Oh, God, this president is so full of Robert Tilton farts.
I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Headed for a high near 70 today before the changes come, and we get a lot cooler. Full forecast in 2 minutes. Rebecca Jarvis says the bank failures recently could also lead to a slowdown in interest rate hikes.
The Federal Reserve might hike interest rates less next week or not even at all. That means those credit card payments, new mortgages, they have been going up. They could go up a little bit less.
Now, Secretary of Treasury Janet Yellen just told a Senate finance hearing that the U.S. banking industry, quote, is sound. War on Ukraine, the Associated Press says Poland says it plans to give Ukraine a dozen MiG-29 fighter jets to help fight Russia. And Russia's trying to find the American surveillance drone that went down after an encounter with a Russian fighter jet this week.
Russian ships in the Black Sea are now circling the site where the drone went down. This, as we see for the first time, the now declassified, powerful images of that Russian warplane moments before hitting the propeller of the U.S. drone as drone operators were watching in real time.
Martha Raddatz in Washington, and that's the latest news. Weather is next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
I just got this from Mark, who is just a terrific young man of God and a teacher, a professor, actually. He goes, "You ruined me. I was about to teach a class, and you started talking about the Robert Tilton fart tape. So I Googled it. Let me tell you something. Do not do that unless you have some time to process it."
Yes.
Now I can't stop laughing, and I have to go to work. Then he goes, "P.S." And this is a godly brother. He goes, "P.S. I just sent it to my wife." Listen, I would love to just find the most stoic, serious person. You know those kinds of people, because I'm very, look, I am the same kid that would have sat next to you at 12 years old in class. All right, I am.
Oh, yes.
I have not grown up at all. But I mean, to find somebody really mature and grow up and play that tape and just see if they can, because there's nothing more, sophomore. Like Davidson, he won't even discuss passing gas. No. It's so beneath him. So I wonder if he's ever seen the Robert Tilton fart tape. I sit and watch that, tears streaming out of my eyes. Yes, not a good thing to do before you go teach a college-level course. Join Dan Mandis, Matt Murphy, Brian Wilson, and me for an evening with WTN. It's coming up on March 30th at the Parthenon Grill in Murfreesboro, and I stop right there to say how thrilled I am. We have, I would think, I've never done it because I don't have access to this kind of information. I'm lucky if I find out what my ratings are. I would think we have more listeners in Murfreesboro than any other area. I would think, as we call it in the business, that is by far and away our hot zip. And why we haven't come to Murfreesboro often, let alone, I think this is my first in 16 years. So to all my listeners in the Murfreesboro area, you listen every day. I pray you feel like you really know me, because this is authentically me. You've got to understand, this is our chance to meet you. Now, I don't know why we sit and talk issues for an hour. I wish we didn't. I wish we just ate and laughed and talked with you. But this is really shamelessly our way of coming, all of us, all hosts, and spending an evening with you. You're going to get a great dinner at the Parthenon Grill. You can get the menu and all the ticket information online at 99.7 WTN. But I hope and pray that you can find time to join us at the Parthenon Grill in the Boroughs, 6 o'clock. On March 30th. Get all the information you need at 997WTN.com. Chris Walker, all things Republican. Do I have to try to do it? I can't sing it anyway, and it's Thursday. So we can't do It's Just Another Walker Thursday. Oh, I missed the day. It's next on WTN.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler. One of the things you hear me talk about frequently on my radio show that has been going for over 20 years in the Nashville market is that annuity sales are not necessarily a great thing for the end investor. Now, if you go to an investment firm, a lot of times you'll get that. The first thing that they recommend, an annuity. Banks and investment firms recommend these for one really good reason. And many times that reason isn't the best thing for you. It's commissions. It's a huge moneymaker for the investing industry. This is why I think it's so important that when you work with an investment advisor, that they not be paid on commission. It creates a huge conflict because it creates an incentive to sell you things that may not be in your best interest. If you want to learn more about our approach to investing and financial planning, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call. We don't do anything on commissions. Or you can call 851-1950.
At 9:39, we have sunny skies, 50 degrees in Franklin, 49 in Mount Juliet, 51 in the Borough. Fair downtown on Music Row with naked statues, 47 degrees. It feels like 45. The Dow's down 152. NASDAQ's up 4 lousy bucks, and the S&P's down 7. It's a mixed bag, and the market is just ever so slightly down at 940. I'm Michael DelGiorno, and I get pain, back pain, neck pain, knee pain, hip pain, elbow pain. It's a struggle every day, just battling pain. And if it lets you fall asleep, it's waiting for you first thing in the morning. Lost in all of this is all the things you used to love to do that you can't do anymore. At the Dr. Gill Center for Back, Neck, and Chronic Pain Relief, we're helping people get back to pain-free living. We've been doing it for over 30 years, 500,000 procedures, and over 28,000 patients. And yes, we're a chiropractic center, and chiropractic care really works, but we have state-of-the-art industry equipment like Class 5 lasers, red light therapy, spinal decompression therapy, which was a game changer. It's all designed to pinpoint inflammation in the body, reduce pain, swelling, and accelerate healing through the process of treatment. And it all begins with an affordable, accurate diagnosis. $23 covers everything, in your new patient appointment, your extensive exam, any and all x-rays and imaging, and your accurate diagnosis. So if you're in pain, don't do nothing and don't settle for a pill. Call the Dr. Gill Center in Franklin. New phone number, 882-4838, 882-4838, 882-4838, online at callmepainfree.com. It's just another Walker Thursday? Because he didn't show up Wednesday? Chris Walker is a heck of a nice guy. He probably doesn't want me to say this, but a true brother in Christ, a conservative who happens to still be involved in the Republican Party. That much I don't understand. But we meet once a week to talk all things Republican. And good morning, Chris. I know you had good reason to be missing yesterday. I'm just giving you a hard time. It dawned on me.
They don't allow you to have cell phones on airplanes yet.
Until
that day comes.
You were at a high altitude when we would have normally done our interview. But actually, I kind of like when it's a Walker Thursday and I get to do my fresh version of the song. We have a lot to talk about today. I just played a clip, and I don't know if you need me to replay it, but it's President Biden. He gives a big, long Oval Office tour to Comedy Central and Cal Penn. I wasn't aware that Cal Penn was gay. And they sit down, and Cal's talking to him about him and his partner, and they're engaged to be married, and his aunties are wondering when the marriage is ever going to happen. And then he gets to the thoughtful question of, when did you have your epiphany that gay marriage was okay? And the president waxes this ridiculous tale of his senior year in high school in Scranton, PA, and his tough dad. They see two men in business suits kissing in the street, and then they go off to their separate work buildings, and Joe sees this and looks at his father, and his father turns to him and says, Joey, it's simple. It's just love. But then, unfortunately, we know if that was the epiphany, and I don't know that I believe it in 1960, why 46 years later would he say something like this?
We already have a law, the Defense of Marriage Act, where we've all voted, not where I voted and others said, look, marriage is between a man and a woman, and states must respect that. Nobody's violated that law. There's been no challenge to that law. Why do we need a constitutional amendment? Marriage is between a man and a woman.
Apparently, I don't want to accuse the president of lying or waxing another corn pop story, but doesn't make a lot of sense. This is becoming common. I guess my question for you is, politicians and telling stories and outrageous fabrications, it doesn't seem to matter anymore. Either side. And that's really troubling.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's a lie. Obviously it's not true. It doesn't pass even the simplest of just kind of, smell test, for lack of a better word. It's not true. It cannot be true. If it is true, then he's a 50-year hypocrite. If he's not true, which is very unlikely that's true. If it's not, then that leads to the question, well, it obviously must not be true. So either outcome. But what's interesting to me is it's okay for someone to say, I changed my mind. This happened or circumstances happened or whatever. And, I came to this epiphany then. But he has to somehow, lie and say that, well, this was always what I believed, when everyone knows it's not true. But that's the problem now. And that's why we have to wonder why so many people have lost faith in all of our institutions. Because the leaders of those institutions have no connection to reality or telling people, the truth and what they're doing or what they're thinking.
But is it worse? I mean, here we have, and I wrote this book 22 years ago, and I started with the cultural wars, because we were abandoning a God, a way, a truth, a life, an even notion that there is such a thing as absolute truth, for a philosophy, a failed philosophy of moral relativism. Anything goes. If you think it's true in your mind, then it's true. Well, that's led to the chaos that we're living. Maybe if we've abandoned truth, lies don't matter. That's scary if that's true.
Well, I mean, ultimately, a society that's not based on foundational principles of truth will not last very long. And politics is the least of our concerns if that's really where things are headed. Ultimately,
that's kind of where I'm at.
My truth and what else matters.
That's kind of where I'm at. That's where I'm at. And it makes these weekly interviews difficult. I mean, listen, how is this any different than George Santos? Why is George Santos fair game for Saturday Night Live and and Joe Biden isn't. I mean, this is just storytelling. That'd be like me telling you I was the best guy on our football team in high school. I wasn't.
Yeah, I too was the best guy on the high school football team, and I didn't even play on the high school football team. That's how far I could go with it. We know why, because ultimately it's not about the truth for Democrats or the truth for Joe Biden. It's the truth for advancing, the political. Frankly, I heard something the other day on a podcast that I'm not sure I'd heard before, but I think it actually makes sense. It's advancing the secular religion. Because in that same interview, Joe Biden talked about something being sinful in terms of Florida, mutilating children and being against it is somehow almost sinful, as we like to call it. Somebody called that, the next wave of secular religion. And that's really what we're up against. It's not even liberalism or, as Bethany Mandel couldn't really define wokeism, and that, you have the Twitter brigade coming after her. It is a religion with which there is no escape of what Pope Benedict called, reason and modernity. You have a religion that's continuing to get more and more pushy, more and more aggressive, more and more, just balkanizing people across the country, because ultimately the adherence to the secular religion is the only thing that matters to a lot of these folks. And it doesn't matter if you didn't agree with it before. You have to kind of bow to the altar of it now. We saw that with Drew Barrymore this week, right? I mean, they're literally bowing in front of.
By the way, in case people, I didn't do this story yesterday, and I could have, and I just got busy with other things. She's talking with a 1-year trans male, or I guess I say trans female, born male, now for the last year believes she's a female, dressed like a female on the show. This new age, modern cultural twit, Drew Barrymore, literally gets on her knees and bows before her. And I don't know what message that sends to the women's movement as you're bowing to this 1-year trans, but it was just bizarre, and we do bow in religion. Well, I always say you don't abandon one God and not replace it with another, even if it's self. And that's a lot of what's happening. When we come back, I want to play you a clip. And David Zanotti went on and on. I don't think this is anything big of me to do. I don't view myself, in light of eternity, I am not a competitor of Glenn Beck's. We have the same God. We're going to spend the same eternity with that God. He is trying to reveal the same truths I am. I don't care if he's on a different station. I'm not. He did an amazing interview with Governor DeSantis and asks Governor DeSantis a question about his book. And Governor DeSantis goes on to drop the ultimate bombshell concerning COVID. And I want to play that for you. I don't think I have a producer, so we're going to go late. Management, don't get mad at me. I don't have a choice. So I'm going to play you this clip. This is Glenn Beck saying, you said something in your book. Would you explain it to my listeners? Listen closely to this bombshell.
So the White House task force was hammering me for the first 3 months because they wanted me to be clamping down harder, and she, so I called. I was like, Deborah, just tell me, when in American history modern has this been done, and what were the results? Because I kind of feel like we're flying blind here, and we may be doing things that are going to be damaging.
Now, I remember in real time 3 years ago we were having this conversation on the air. Chuck McGowan was very helpful with David and I remember saying to David, when in history have we ever quarantined the healthy? Always the sick, but never the healthy. And even then, in real time, people act like, well, we didn't know these things in real time. Yes, we did. The curious did. In fact, I remember when we were doing the models and they were saying 2 million people were going to die by Easter. And so I go to the University of Washington because I know they don't have data. So they must have assumptions instead of data. What are the assumptions? I couldn't find them. So they're just pulling numbers out of thin air. But I remember questioning this. You don't quarantine the healthy. And by the way, if you lock not only are you taking control of lives, taking control of businesses, shutting them down, taking control of schools and shutting them down, and then we all know the trillions they spent to reopen everything. But you're locking some people shelter in place with abusers or with depression and the proclivities for suicide and a lot of other bad things. Here's a governor in real time at the time asking those questions. Now, the difference between him asking them and me is he's talking to Dr. Birx. He's talking to Fauci. And he's asking them, have we ever done this in history? And how did it work? and listen to the answer.
And she said, she's like, it's kind of our own science experiment that we're doing in real time. And that didn't sit well with me.
No.
I mean, you're a citizen of a republic. You're not a guinea pig. And so what I think that there's a whole bunch of other things I talk about in the book.
But I mean, think about that for a second. And he gets we're a republic. We are a government of, for, and by the people who are self-governed and moral. Government is to be limited. He gets all of that, makes a reference that you don't make guinea pigs out of citizens who are really the kings in some kind of social experiment as doctors taking over a republic. I mean, he gets it historically so profoundly. But imagine you're talking to Fauci or Bricks, and they're all telling you this is a big experiment. Now, he didn't bow to it. Here's the question for you. I know everybody in the upcoming primary is going to be looking at the 4 legs of the table. One is the economy. And I think Donald Trump will fare well on that because he made America great the first time. They'll talk about the border and the border crisis. And the president will fare well on that because he was securing the border before he was removed from office. The third leg is probably going to be wars and foreign policy. And again, I think he'll fare well. The fourth leg is going to be COVID still and everything we're finding out about COVID. And while Donald Trump was on taking these people's cues, listening to Fauci, listening to Birx, doing everything they said, talking on television daily in news conferences, it's a beautiful vaccine, take the vaccine, you're going to love it, it's beautiful. He fell for it all. This governor didn't. How on earth can Donald Trump overcome that in a primary heads up against Governor DeSantis? Because I would suspect that virtually half of the really passionate Donald Trump supporters are going to side with DeSantis on how he did handle it versus, well, quite frankly, a governor you were working for at the time handled it, let alone Donald Trump. This is a big chess move made early with Glenn Beck that's going to play out really big when we get into the heat of the primary.
Well, I mean, you and I were talking about this in 2020. You and I were talking about this in 2021. I mean,
of course we were.
The information is available to you, like you said, if you're curious enough to find it, rather than just trusting a couple people who have a credential flashed in your face. You have to do your own research on it. And I had a lot of people upset with me in 2020 saying I was crazy and, I drank the Kool-Aid or whatever. And I was like, I'm just telling you, like, this stuff doesn't make any sense to me. And no, I'm not a scientist, but I have common sense. And this isn't, and that's what Governor DeSantis is saying. This is a common sense question. President Trump will have a hard time, kind of saying anything. And what he's doing is trying to obfuscate and trying to, convince people that what DeSantis is something that he's not. When actually he needs to look at himself in the mirror and decide that that's what he was. I mean, Trump not only listened to Fauci and Birx, he empowered them. He had the ability to tell them, no, go sit down. We're going to get other opinions. And he didn't do it. It is the single biggest flaw of his administration is his inability to stand up to the bureaucrats of Washington because he trusted them more than he trusted the people who elected them. And I would argue one other thing, too. I would say he's actually pretty weak on the border because he had 4 years to do something. He didn't do anything. He can go out there and talk about it now and act like he'll do it again. But if past his prologue,
I disagree with you on that. He definitely articulated. He prioritized it. It was the main leg of his campaign. It was the main thing he followed through with. He was building the wall. I don't know. They go there. But
he didn't build any of the wall. That's where you and I will disagree because he didn't. He had an opportunity.
Well, I know, but he was working against people trying to stop it. But I would say he definitely blew it on COVID.
I would say he was more focused on dealing with cable news and Twitter than actually focusing on getting in a room.
Now you're revealing you just didn't care for him, and I get that. But all right, so here's
no, Michael, that's not what it is. I expect results from someone who says they're going to do something. You can't go out there and get a free pass and say, well, I talked about it on the campaign and not follow up. Any other politician would rightfully have that being thing. He doesn't get a pass because he talked about it on the campaign and didn't follow through. People have their priorities. If they don't follow through on that, that's up to them.
I got an
email.
I'm going to be late. I'm going to be late for the news, so we're going to have to go to overtime. Can we?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, because I want to start with an email from a listener. This is not like some worship Donald Trump. This is a solid guy who gets it, and he suggested something that I think we should return to this debate with what he's saying. I actually disagreed with him or elaborated on his question, and I want to hear your response to it as well, because I think that's a big part of where we're headed. That's assuming we can agree that, and I am respectful of everybody who decides to run for president. I will vet them all, and every one of them will get a chance to win my vote. You know how I feel about Vivek. I'm loving this guy. I'm loving DeSantis.
Yeah.
I love Donald Trump for what he did, and there's some things that he did I didn't love. But I'm going to give every single one of these candidates a chance to win my vote. But my suspicion is it's between DeSantis and Trump, and this email leads to an even bigger question as this plays out. More on a Walker Thursday when we come back after the news, which is next.
I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Checking traffic. Looks like we've got a problem right now. I-65 southbound right before Trinity Lane. The right lane is blocked by a crash. Crews right now are offloading the truck, so it looks like that could be out of the way here momentarily. Meanwhile, Rebecca Jarvis says the bank failures could lead to a slowdown in interest rate hikes in this country.
The Federal Reserve might hike interest rates less next week or not even at all. That means those credit card payments, new mortgages, they have been going up. They could go up a little bit less.
Secretary of Treasury Janet Yellen just told a Senate finance hearing the U.S. banking industry is, quote, sound. War on Ukraine, the Associated Press says Poland says it plans to give Ukraine a dozen MiG-29 fighter jets. It would become the first NATO country to fulfill Kyiv's increasingly urgent request for air power in its fight against Russia. Meanwhile, Russia trying to find that American surveillance drone that went down after an encounter with a Russian fighter jet this week.
Russian ships in the Black Sea are now circling the site where the drone went down. This, as we see for the first time, the now declassified powerful images of that Russian warplane moments before hitting the propeller of the U.S. drone as drone operators were watching in real time.
Now, Martha Raddatz reporting the Pentagon released that video this morning. Right now in Tennessee, News 2 says a bill's advancing that changes the state's abortion ban. It passed easily in the House Health Committee yesterday. It will allow doctors to perform an abortion to save the life of the mother. That's the latest news. Weather is next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
All right, currently at 10:06, we have sunny skies, 53 degrees this hour at the Puffy Muffin. We're warming up nicely. 52 to the north in Hendersonville. Downtown on Music Row, 55. It feels like 52. The market's improved since we've last talked. The Dow's now up 39. NASDAQ is now up 102. And the S&P is 20. All three are in the green, I guess I should say. Shang Shu Zhou. All three are in the green, slightly up at 10:06. I'm Michael DelGiorno for Jeff Eddy's Efficient Heating and Cooling of Tennessee. This is the only company I trust when it comes to home heating and air, and it's been that way for 14 years. Now, they're an Elite Pro partner with Rheem. Rheem is one of the leading providers of heat and air, and this is a distinction that basically says they provide customers with the highest level of year-round comfort and service. I think that's the perfect way to describe what I've enjoyed for 14 years. Whether it's, gee, should I fix it or get a new one? And getting a real honest opinion. Well, if I get a new one, should I get this here, that's here? And getting a real honest opinion. They do residential, light commercial service, all brands, all technologies, conventional and geothermal. They're an Elite Pro partner with Rheem. They're a diamond contractor with Mitsubishi. And, of course, they're A-plus rated for all. This is a good time to start setting up your spring maintenance because soon it'll be summer. Your air conditioning turns on, stays on. It's either ready to break or ready to work. We're going to clean it up, service it. It can't exceed $125 a home no matter how many units you have. You get that back in energy efficiency. But you'll save hundreds avoiding repair and thousands avoiding early replacement. Get your spring maintenance done now. Whether maintenance, repair, or replacement, trust who I trust. Jeff Eddy's Efficient Heating and Cooling of Tennessee. 784-4424, 784-4424, online at efficienthvac.net. I have to tell you, I'm a little uncomfortable. I feel like me and Chris just had our first real fight. Now, I'm a little excited that I won, but I feel uncomfortable that we had our first. No, wait a minute. The referees are all under the hood. Wait a minute. Maybe I don't feel bad. We have a ruling, I think. After further review, your cheap shot against President Trump over the border with Nancy Pelosi in control, blocking everything every step of the way, did rule my way. But no, here's the conversation that we're having. I think this is a tough, we got to make a general assumption that we think this is coming down to DeSantis and Trump through a primary process. And I don't hate Donald Trump. In fact, I will thank God forever for Donald Trump and John F. Kennedy, two presidents, I think, that weren't supposed to happen. One ended up getting assassinated. The other one, of course, was harassed and politically assassinated. I don't know that I'm necessarily desiring for him to come back. I want to see a Donald Trump 2.0. I want to see a guy that will do all the things he did policy-wise, but learn some lessons rhetoric-wise. And I don't know that I see that yet. Governor DeSantis, a governor who's been living it, who's been doing it, is very interesting to me. We talk about Vivek a lot, Ramaswamy, but I think he's going to be more of an influence of the type of things we talk about, but never underestimate that. If we're still in an outsider referendum election type mode, this guy might do better than people think. But, here's a moment where DeSantis is on with Glenn Beck, and he talks about what Fauci and Bricks were suggesting, that we're going to lock in place, shelter in place. We're going to quarantine the healthy and the sick. Well, we know quarantining the sick in nursing homes was not a good thing to do in New York. That's why you don't have a Governor Cuomo anymore. But quarantining the healthy, somebody curious with common sense, even not a doctor or a scientist, shouldn't have just blind followed. You should have asked some questions, and DeSantis did. And the answer they gave him was, well, it's kind of an experiment in real time. And he's like, an experiment in real time in a republic using the people as guinea pigs? And then he surrounded himself with other doctors and scientific minds and came to a different conclusion. That's where we were fighting. And I said, this is going to be significant because if it is between these two, the four legs are going to be the economy. Trump should do fine. So should DeSantis. It's going to be the border. That should be an advantage for Trump. It's going to be foreign policy. That should be an advantage for Trump. But this is a real problem for Donald Trump. He listened to the wrong people and was wrong on COVID. DeSantis refused to listen to them, listened to the right people, and was right. Now, it sounds like a cheap shot, but you were working for our governor at the time, and that's when your governor lost me, was over his handling of COVID. So not all governors handled it this way. Now I want to get to this email. And the email said, and this is not some Trump fanatic being ridiculous. This is a sound, reasonable, good guy listener asking this question. And he asked the question, he says, well, this is all fine and good that we're hearing this now, but why weren't we hearing this in real time? Which I thought was an interesting way to ask the question. And so I said to him, well, you would have, except for the mainstream media. But there's no question he did it. He defied it. And Florida did handle COVID the best. They did stay open, and they defied the federal government. And this is going to be a strength for him. So how does this all play out when you get into the heart of a primary with these two candidates? I think COVID's going to be as big of an issue or bigger because of all we're learning and all the lies that are being revealed. This is going to be trouble for Donald Trump down the road.
Well, absolutely. First of all, I don't think we're fighting, but I would say a couple things on this. One, I completely agree with you, and I don't want you or your listeners to hear this the wrong way, but Trump is being dishonest on COVID right now. He's trying to paint DeSantis in Florida in a way that is obviously not true. He's trying to call him lockdown Ron. He's trying to call him all these other things when we all know and remember that DeSantis was one of the first ones to stand up and say, no, this is not really accurate. This is not the way we're going to do it in Florida. We're going to reopen schools. We're going to do all these things. And I think Trump is knowing that that's a weakness for him and trying to change his mind. I don't think Trump is being honest, and I think that's something that he needs to be held accountable for. Again, do not hear that as me not liking Donald Trump. I worked to reelect him in 2020. I'm not opposed to him. I don't think he's being honest there. Secondly, I would say that I would connect the two in terms of where you and I potentially disagree on the border. I think they're actually related to the COVID issue. Let's not forget that Trump had a Republican House and Senate for the first 2 years of his administration. And instead of taking the time and using the time that he had to get the stuff he wanted accomplished, he squandered it. For whatever reason, he went on he did a tax cut thing. That's fine. But, he campaigned on the border. He campaigned on other things, didn't do them. Yeah, and then when Nancy Pelosi came in and stopped it, then really stopped a lot of the agenda. I mean, that's a different conversation for sure. But instead of
we may end up in the same place. But here's what I would say. Donald Trump made some really big. Look, George W. Bush made some real big mistakes on the border.
Yeah.
I loved George W. Bush, but I didn't worship him, and he was a human, and he did a lot of things really well, and he did a lot of things really wrong, including calling the Gulf War over before it was actually over. Right. But all right, so my realism is Donald Trump did a lot of great things for the economy, did a lot of things. What he did differently. Ronald Reagan had depth. Donald Reagan had eloquence. Amazing communicative skills. He could win hearts and minds. That created a Reagan revolution that lasted far longer than his presidency. And quite frankly, its most formidable years was after his presidency, where Donald Trump was a disruptive force and a dividing force. And there's a lot of people feeling like, I'd like to go back to that America, but not with that kind of tone and rhetoric. So what you just described, where I think we arrive at the same place, is Donald Trump's got to prove to me he's a 2.0. He's learned some lessons, and the way he's attacking DeSantis is showing me that's all he's got is name calling. He wasn't curious enough. He was lazy. He was trusting. And by the way, there's no excuse for this. The same Fauci that told him it's no big deal, it's a cold, it probably won't get here, and by the time it does, it'll burn off in the spring and summer. And then later they attributed those quotes to the president and made an idiot out of the president. He should have learned that. He should have been curious when he said 2 million are going to die by Easter. Well, prove it. So he definitely didn't handle COVID as well as DeSantis, and I think that's the one leg that's going to be a problem for him. And I guess I just disagree with you either through perception or reality. The other three legs he'll probably be fine on, and he's not showing early on that he's going to handle it any different than he did in 2016, which is to give names and name call. That's going to turn off, I think, a lot of Republicans. I would say advantage DeSantis moving forward because I keep waiting for DeSantis. I keep waiting for DeSantis to show me some weakness. I told a long story. I'm not going to retell it about a house we got, and I kept waiting for something to be wrong with it. It was just too good to be true. And, of course, there was nothing wrong with it. And that's kind of how it's feeling with DeSantis. And if I want somebody out there fighting for cultural life and death, literal life and death for the unborn, and future or no future for capitalism, I think I like a guy rooted in our founding fathers' intent and words and understanding and who can articulate it. And this guy's doing it. I guess what I'm confessing to you is I'm not even a Republican anymore. and I'm early getting wooed to DeSantis, and he has yet to fail me.
Well, but I mean, let's not forget, and I think this goes back to your point about Governor Lee and others. Like, all politicians are fallible, or are not infallible.
Of
I
course.
mean, if we're placing our faith in an individual, someone will always let you down. I mean, it's not. And I love Governor Lee. I mean, you don't have disagreements on that right now. That's fine. But I learned very early on in my career in politics, you can't allow personalities to be the driver of what you're wanting, because ultimately, as a conservative, there will always be something where there's a disagreement. And I've come to peace with that, and I'm okay with that, and I can get an elephant if I need to. But I don't expect perfection, but I do want to see results, and I do want to see the ball being moved forward in a conservative direction on the whole. That was certainly true with Trump, but it also could have been a lot more had there been the effort put into actually trying to do the job. And that's where I see a difference with Governor DeSantis. And again, it's where I come back from the immigration line. Donald Trump should be praised and lauded for taking the immigration issue and making it front and center and being unafraid to say what a lot of people were thinking about. And to that, we owe his gratitude. My position for him is that he didn't follow through on it when he got into office. Instead, it became another talking point in a barrage of talking points without actually making any decisions. It comes down to, what are you doing with the time and power you've been given? And when you look back on the Trump time, did he have success with Supreme Court justices? Absolutely. Was that his direct, action, or was that the, fate providing him 3 judges and him having the guts to follow through with, nominating 3 good people? That's true. But ultimately, all of that wasn't based on his, kind of direct actions as president. It is part of his role as president in other branches. And that, to me, is a huge part of the job that DeSantis is proving that he knows how to do. He's taken a state that was relatively purple and turned it red because of conservative victories and showing conservatives that can happen.
Before we take the break, real quickly, are you as concerned as I am and many of my listeners that if DeSantis, through a long one-on-one fight, gets the nomination, that there are certain elements of Trump supporters that will not unite behind DeSantis?
Do I worry about that? Yes, every day.
Well, that was quick. We can take the break.
I worry about that on the other end, too, by the way. I worry about that for being on the other side, too.
I was just going to say, let me do the reverse of that. Do you worry about DeSantis supporters having a hard time uniting because they fear all the division and baggage that comes with Trump, even though it's great policy, not uniting behind him? I think the proclivity for Trump people that really believe only Donald Trump will do what he says. Only Donald Trump can save America. Now you're getting beyond politics.
That's right.
I would think the proclivity would be for them not to unite. I want to go through some polling numbers when we come back. Not just Trump versus DeSantis and where that stands. And think of this, is a former sitting president. He should have a huge advantage over a governor who hasn't even announced yet. Some surprising numbers there, Quinnipiac and CNN. And then when we start looking at the other side, the Democrats, I hope everyone's come to the same conclusion I have. Not only is Joe Biden going to run, he is their best bet at winning. How does he fare versus Trump or DeSantis next?
The nation's Treasury Secretary getting a grilling before the Senate Finance Committee in the aftermath of two banks collapsing. Poland says it plans to do something no other NATO country has done since Russia invaded Ukraine. These stories and more at 10:30 on Supertalk 99.7 WTN.
I didn't interrupt your newscast earlier, did I?
No.
Our tech guy was helping you with something, and then I pulled a Brian Wilson. The company is very smart to do this. They'll test us every now and then. And I'm usually really hip, and I did everything because I take all our training courses very seriously. You know that.
Yes.
And they finally got me, and I failed one.
Uh-oh.
I was pulling a. She was in ET. She just bowed before a transgendered. I pulled a Drew Marymore. I just fell to my knees before him. I got tested and failed.
Oh, Brother Mike.
Well, it happens. I did everything. It looked like it came from the company. I'm getting to where I don't want to open anything.
Well, we're fortunate it was just a test.
It was just I repeat, just a
test.
We're not fighting. We're not arguing. I will say this to Chris Walker. I think it's so. I do it with. Well, first of all, I only work out my salvation with fear and trembling. But I take very seriously remembering accurately because I want to be fair. And remembering accurately can cause me to just crucify Joe Biden today for playing identity politics. But remembering accurately, I got to disagree with you about squandering. That's a big word. He initiated a big tax cut, which really allowed the American people to prosper and the economy to return to greatness again. He was awkward at times, but very effective with foreign policy. No one was misbehaving. And we've seen the difference. And he did try to prioritize the border. And I do think Donald Trump had everything against him. Establishment Republicans, far left, socialist Democrats, and progressive left, and the mainstream media. This guy had his hands full. And I don't know that I would characterize his first 2 years before losing control of Congress as a squander. I think he got a lot done. I think he was very transformative. So I don't know that I necessarily want 4 more years of him. And that's my prerogative, too. But I want to remember accurately. Let's get beyond that disagreement. Let's get to reality of today. Let's start with the Democrats. There's no question in my mind. All they have is Joe Biden. You have a sitting president with a 43% support. Second is the vice president at 9%. By the way, you want to talk about a dud. Gavin Newsom and Kamala Harris are the two biggest duds. Well, Mayor Pete is right where he was when he didn't get elected the first time, 3%. And I got news for you. Without Joe Biden, you know who would get the nomination? The same one who would have gotten it 2.5 years ago and would have gotten it 6.5 years ago, Bernie Sanders. He's right there at 8%. Gavin Newsom, for all he's tried to do to stir things up and get people excited about him, he's just at 2%. This is, in all senility, in all hilarity, in all incompetence, this is Joe Biden's party. He is their best bet to win. Do we need to waste any more time on the who will be the Democratic nominee? He's got to run now. They need him to live now.
No, I mean, I think that's right. I mean, and you have the party, saying as much, right? I mean, they're literally talking to, Elizabeth Warren, telling her to apologize to Kamala Harris and others to try to make peace on the idea of what the ticket's going to be.
I'll do you one better. Not only is he the right choice and their only choice, as scary as that is to say out loud, if the election were held today, he'd beat both DeSantis and Trump.
Oh, would he? I don't know about that.
But
it does amaze me that there's a lot of...
That is what the polls are showing. That might even be the reality. I don't know how this guy gets away with what he gets away with.
That's what I was going to say. It's tough for me sometimes to know, to kind of believe my own eyes and ears. I'm still surprised about last year's, the midterms. I am surprised at the lack of accountability that people are holding Joe Biden to and his party to the problems we are seeing in this country. We haven't even talked about Silicon Valley Bank and all.
No, I know. Well, we could go another half hour, but listen, that's all going to change within the next year and 10 months as well. I mean, COVID is going to be a much bigger thing a year from now. When you find out it is one of the greatest hoaxes ever perpetrated on humanity, That's going to have a different feeling. The economy is going to be in full recession. That's going to have a different feeling. Inflation will have gone worse, not better. That's going to have a different feeling. Here's the one that surprises me. This is Quinnipiac University polling. Donald Trump trails Joe Biden 49 to 45% if the election were held today. Governor DeSantis, almost a dead heat, 47 to 46. Donald Trump was president for 4 years. These two faced each other in a presidential election 2.5 years ago, and it hasn't budged, 49-45. DeSantis, and the more he talks and people listen, it's going to get better for him. He's not even in the race, and he starts 1 point behind. Should that suggest to anybody you're much better? There's no doubt in my mind they want Donald Trump, but it should suggest that they don't want Governor DeSantis, I would think, as an opponent.
Well, that's why you're seeing, I saw an interesting tweet yesterday. If you look at the front page of the MSNBC website, there were 11 stories about Donald Trump, 2 about, somebody else, and then 1 about Silicon Valley Bank, 1 about DeSantis. It's just, they cannot stop but talk about him because in some, look, I don't want this to be like everyone thinking this is a negative Trump thing. It's not. I don't feel negatively. I just see this dispassionately and say, okay, this does not look like a good political outcome. I think just everyone's made up their mind. I think what you said, I'm not sure people feel like they want another 4 years of that. There are a lot of reasons for that. I mean, you're right. The media is a big play of that. There's a lot of, headwinds against him. I would argue that that's the case for any Republican. I mean, it's not like DeSantis has positive press relationships in Florida. You have to overcome that. George W. Bush, the media called him Hitler, for goodness sake, because of what he was doing in the Middle East. So, I'm not sure that's unique to Trump. I mean, it's certainly a louder volume, and there's certainly a lot more options. There are just 5 networks. Now there's 50 websites that you can go to. So, it's a different kind of media environment. But the headwinds remain the same for Republicans and conservatives overall because there's so much infrastructure that we have to campaign and govern against. It's very difficult. But I also think that means it's really hard for Trump to win over new people in a general election. I think it's very difficult for him to win a general.
People right now are very concerned about the cost of living and inflation, very concerned about job loss, stagnant wages, heading into recession, wars, rumors of wars, potential world war, border issues, fentanyl. I could go on. And here's a president selling gay marriage and drag shows. And anybody that opposes surgeries on children, irreversible mutilation and surgery as close to sin, and the climate blank checks that they're writing, it sure looks out of touch with where the American people are today, let alone what that'll feel like in a year and a half from now. This is going to get favorable for Trump and DeSantis, but I got to tell you, I've been doing this for 40 years. You've been doing it and working for a lot of these people for decades. This gets quite favorable for Governor DeSantis as time ticks. Very favorable.
I hope so, but that's where I kind of scratch my head at our country right now. Who are these 49% of people that are backing? I don't understand it. I'm in Minneapolis right now, and this is kind of a bluish state right now. It's certainly not reddish purple. And I'm walking around, and I don't understand why people are voting for this radical agenda that is truly transforming for the worse children and families and businesses and the economic structure that's helped us grow. I don't understand that other half of the country right now.
Do you want to go to double overtime? Because I can answer that. It's because it is their utmost highest affection. It is their God. It is their religion. And even when it's not working, they just see it as a trial and suffering. They literally worship at the teat of this worldview, this flawed worldview. It has become their God. I can even prove it in a Rasmussen report. I can do it without you.
But is that your typical Democrat voter, or is that your Democrat activist? That's what I don't understand. And it's something we have to figure out as a party to know how to win, because ultimately we have to get to 50+1, and we're losing that swayable group, and they're moving towards the left. And I don't think it's a religious thing for them or a worship thing. is people want to be inherently good, and they think that the fight and the fight back that people are having on these really, really important issues are not in of themselves good. And that's where we have to figure out how to really make that case, because we know we're on the side of good here, but we're not winning it in the narrative side of the argument.
I can do double overtime without you. Even Donald Trump getting wise about early voting is a good sign. You're going to have to engage in that as well. Boy, Walker Thursdays kind of feel better than Walker Wednesdays. I've enjoyed this, and it's fun. It's fun to have some slight disagreements too. Otherwise,
yeah,
I'll begin to question if I married the right person. I clearly married the right person. Chris Walker, all things Republican, consultant analyst, joins us every Wednesday. Today it had to be Thursday, but he'll join us again next Wednesday. God bless you. Have a safe travels, by the way. Actually, be safe in Minnesota. Guard your heart and mind. 10:33, the news starts now.
I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Got a crash 65 southbound before Trinity Lane. That's north of downtown. The right exit lane is blocked 65 southbound before Trinity Lane. New developments in the Instagram controversy involving Lieutenant Governor Randy McNally. Fox 17 says Chapel Hill Republican State Rep Todd Warner is calling for McNally to resign, and he wants the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation to probe McNally's comments and emojis under a nearly nude man's photos as a possible sex crime. And right now in our nation's capital,
I can reassure the members of the committee that our banking system is sound and that Americans can feel confident that their deposits will be there when they need them.
Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen testifying and answering questions in a Senate Finance Committee hearing this morning after the collapse of two banks last week has left Americans nervous about access to their money. That's the latest news. Weather's next.
I happen to have a high status banker staying with me right now. We had a long conversation about this last night. There's a real bad history concerning this. But there's been really bad banking done by the banks that I do think in all the narrative and discussions, Ken, gets lost. This was a bank, and this is where the narratives do make sense. When you have a board filled with identity politics, this person's gay, this person's transgendered, this person's black, this person's Hispanic. Well, that's great for multiculturalism. That's great for diversity. But none of them knew anything about banking. And that was really bad for the bank, and anticipating and preparing and protecting. They should have seen these treasury values. They should have seen these vulnerabilities. A lot of banks do, and they didn't. We had the same discussion over fraud with COVID. You know, that too fell on the banks too. A really good bank was protecting as that they knew who they were giving these PPO loans to, and they were, double checking. Now that kept fraud down. So what you end up with was bad history, bad oversight by government, and then some bad banking that causes a lot of this. And you have to understand it in its totality. By the way, if we were on the air, was that last Friday when we were doing all this stuff on the lieutenant governor, or was that the Friday before? No, that was just last Friday.
Yeah,
right?
That was last week.
And I said, I say he's gone by 5 today.
Right.
And then the consensus among all of us talking was, well, no, I think they'll take the weekend. I mean, you got to figure out who's going to replace him. Everybody assumes Jack Johnson, but, we kind of all felt like, no, they'll wait and do it after the weekend, Monday. And now it's Thursday, and we got one guy saying something needs to happen. This is now gone from an embarrassment to the state to...
Well, he's saying more than something needs to happen. He's
saying he needs to go, but he should be gone already.
Well, he's saying more than that. He's
being investigated, but what are you going to do?
He's alleging that he's, started this when he was a minor. He's accusing him of something pretty big here.
I thought the kid was 20.
Well, that's what he's saying. That's the whole story here.
Well, he's saying
20 isn't a minor.
No, listen to the story.
Well, he's saying that this guy is saying that McNally may have groomed him before
when he was 17.
He turned 18.
Oh, okay. Well, that's something different. But why is he still lieutenant governor? Is my question.
Well, yeah, that's what you're. I
mean, why hasn't he
saying?
Stepped down or been told to step down, as he suggested in his Phil Williams interview? I mean, it's just embarrassing that he's still in office after this. I get the allegations. That's something new, but
yeah.
It was just an embarrassment. I can't believe I took the under. Remember, I said he'll be gone by 5 today, which was today. Friday, everybody else kind of felt like, nah, it'll probably be Monday. And here it is Thursday, nothing. And now a new investigative angle, but that's just embarrassing.
But, yeah, we'll see where it goes from here. I mean, this is just one guy, and it's a Chapel Hill state rep. I think that if this was somebody, higher up in the Republican leadership in the House, it would be very significant.
I have joked about this in the past. By the way, Mac, I love when you just clarify things.
That's Brother Mac.
Just make sure know what you're.
No, I got it, but I'm just saying, I was just making a simple point. Didn't we all think he'd be gone by now?
Yes.
At least, now what you do to him after that is something different. I love nitrous oxide. Now, thank goodness it's not available to me, right? I'd have a problem with nitrous. If there was nitrous oxide at my house by a chair, I'm watching a ball game tonight with nitrous oxide. I think it's just and I used to always say, why don't we just get rid of all bars? You go in, they turn on the nitrous oxide, we all laugh, watch a game, eat a little, maybe get to know each other, and then you give me some oxygen and I drive home.
Yeah.
Because I think it's just the greatest feeling in the world.
That oxygen sobers you right up.
Neurologist Dr. David Nicole arrives on the show at 10:39 to fun suck away all of this. Claims nitrous oxide abuse can be more dangerous than cocaine. The substance known as laughing gas is commonly used. Where are 16 and 24-year-olds get it? I only get it at the dentist. Let me tell you something. There would be times I'd go once a year, get my teeth cleaned, but never twice a year.
Yeah.
If they would let me go 4 times a year, I'd get my teeth cleaned 4 times a year just for the nitrous oxide.
Right.
I'm known at the dentist office as the addict.
Give me the gas, baby.
But, where are 16 and 20-year-olds getting nitrous oxide?
It's out there.
Consumption has increased since the onset of the pandemic, and he sees more patients coming in with side effects. Well, now, I'll be serious for a second. You couldn't do it that often. You're depleting your brain of oxygen. Nitrous oxide is commonly purchased for restaurants. It can be difficult to limit the sale of nitrous oxide. 50% of the people are unaware that nitrous oxide can cause nerve damage and paralysis.
Ooh.
Wow.
Why is it commonly, Mac, you're the big researcher.
Yeah, why is it commonly used in restaurants?
What is restaurants doing with nitrous oxide? Is that what... that's how we make Coca-Cola. Well, no wonder the headline is it's more dangerous than cocaine. Can you imagine Coca-Cola when it used to have cocaine in it? Have a Coke and a smile.
The gas acts as a propellant to create whipped cream, culinary foams, delicate sauces, marinades, and exotic cocktails.
So these guys are getting jobs at restaurants and doing nitrous oxide. No wonder.
So that explains...
No wonder my steak came undercooked and late.
And that explains that episode in Tulsa King where... he went to his buddy who owns the restaurant to store all those tanks of nitrous oxide.
Yeah, this is becoming serious now. Well, what we did, what was the, was it not woofing? What were they doing?
Whippets.
With the cans, yeah, they were doing.
Huffing.
Huffing, that was it, huffing.
Yeah, they were, whippets.
That is very bad for
me. I smoked a joint and built a dam at school. What's the big deal? 10-4. All right, so it's now official. I can't joke about nitrous oxide anymore. Not that it's now becoming a serious problem.
Rats.
Everybody's got to ruin everything, right?
Absolutely. There's always one person that ruins it for everybody.
Could you Google one more thing for me, Mac?
Yeah.
Can you get nitrous oxide in gummy form?
That's coming next.
Coming soon for erectile dysfunction.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler. One of the things you hear me talk about frequently on my radio show that has been going for over 20 years in the Nashville market is that annuity sales are not necessarily a great thing for the end investor. Now, if you go to an investment firm, a lot of times you'll get that. The first thing that they recommend, an annuity. Banks and investment firms recommend these for one really good reason. And many times that reason isn't the best thing for you. It's commissions. It's a huge moneymaker for the investing industry. This is why I think it's so important that when you work with an investment advisor, that they not be paid on commission. It creates a huge conflict because it creates an incentive to sell you things that may not be in your best interest. If you want to learn more about our approach to investing and financial planning, Go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call. We don't do anything on commissions. Or you can call 615-851-1950.
All right, currently at 10:45, sunshine in Franklin, 56 degrees, 55 in the Juliet, down in the Borough, 57, downtown on Music Row. The statues are naked, the skies are fair. Oh my gosh, is he here? Did he stay? He just dropped it? Oh my.
Was that Dr. J? Wow. Oh my gosh.
I actually feel like I could cry.
Dr. J is here?
Wow.
Why wouldn't he come in so I could hug him?
Dr. J's in this building?
No, Shane, a listener, I was talking about how much I loved Dr. J when I was a kid.
Oh, I was getting
And
ready
he
to
goes,
say.
I have an autographed Dr. Julius Erving basketball from 1998 for your man cave, and he brought it. Oh.
Wow.
Shane, I will cherish this to the day
That
I
is
die.
cool, man.
I grew up in
So
Chicago, so I loved Norm Van Leer. I loved Chet Walker, Bob Butterbean Love, and Jerry Sloan. But even though I loved the Bulls growing up, I worshipped Dr. J. I never saw a human. And then Michael Jordan came along. But even then, I mean, what Dr. J was doing in the 70s
That is amazing.
was inhuman.
That's way to go, Brother Michael.
Oh, my gosh, in a case and everything. Yeah. Why wouldn't he come up? He didn't want to? Shane, I won't give your last name. I will give United Waste Solutions a plug. I will cherish this to the day I die.
That's incredible.
And I see you're from Franklin. You ought to come by the house and see where I put it.
Did he happen to drop off any hot
thanks for
chicken?
bringing this up. You stop it. Everything's food with you.
It sure is.
Oh, my gosh.
That's amazing.
Now, you know what I'm doing? Dr. J touched this ball.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
Dr. J touched that ball, man.
I'll never forget. I used to sing Sir Duke, and I changed the words when I was a kid. I go, you can tell right away with Dr. J in the kingdom of Sir Duke. Oh, Julius Erving. Wow. That's somebody brought me something one time that his mother had of John F. Kennedy's. And you're tied now. You're tied for first with the greatest gift a listener has ever given me.
That's pretty cool, man.
I will cherish this, and I will get it on eBay and make whatever. No, I'm kidding. What was I saying? Oh, 56 degrees with naked statues downtown at Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Well, the market's actually going up. Yesterday, I thought was going to be a disaster, and it battled back a little bit with the exception of the Dow. Today, we're all in the green. The Dow's up 138, NASDAQ's up 191, and the S&P is up 41. All three are in the green. The market is slightly up. I I will tell you this someday, if, and I believe you will, marry Hannah, and if you have daughters, you are going to love 2 phases of your life, Mac. Showering your wife, who is the ultimate thing your eyes ever look at, and the ultimate love of your life. You're going to love giving them jewelry. And then you're going to have daughters, and it's a completely different feeling. But you're going to love showering your daughters with jewelry. Now, always spend more on your wife than your daughters. These are all the reasons why I love Brentwood Jewelry, and I really shop there. I told this story the other day. I was looking at my daughter, and I go, that's a gorgeous necklace. Where did you get that? Well, you, Dad. I don't even remember buying you that, love. And this is the bottom line of my message. I bought a ring for my daughter for $100 that she cherishes, and I cherish it. It's gorgeous. I spend far more than that on my wife, but in every price range, quality, affordability, the ability to express love with impact, whether it's diamond stud earrings, pearl necklaces, tennis bracelets, engagement rings, the ultimate quality, affordability, selection, ideas. And if you don't see it, behind the wall are 10 master jewelers that can create it. This is the official jewelry store of my loves, of my life. And I think they deserve a chance in yours. You are going to love the exceptional style, exceptional deals every day. It's been that way for 50 years. In the heart of Brentwood, just off Franklin Road on Church Street, online anytime at BrentwoodJewelry.com. I got to tell you, there was a time when I did the show with Gwen, and it was fun, because Gwen used to... wasn't Waylon Jennings. Who was the other big one?
Willie Nelson.
No, it wasn't Waylon. Wasn't Willie.
Merle Haggard.
Yes. She used to tour with Merle Haggard.
Awesome.
But like Gwen and I, when we would get these ideas, we could go in the studio, and she used to call me Quincy, because I would do all the producing and she would do all the singing. And earlier in the week, we had Another Bank Bites the Dust. Another Bank Bites the Dust. Today we have In the Land Where Drugs Were Born Came a Cocaine Submarine. Everybody together, we all live in a cocaine submarine. A cocaine submarine. The Navy of Colombia announced Sunday it seized, you talk about clever, a submarine. You got to see the picture of this. They built a submarine for narcotic smugglers, and it was filled with cocaine. Then the Colombian Navy drove it the rest of the way and delivered it. Are you ready? This is going to impress you. $87 million of cocaine in a submarine.
Wow.
We all live in a cocaine submarine, a cocaine submarine. The Navy announced the bust via Twitter. Well, that's official. They videoed a few images of how the drugs were laid out, plus some bonus shots. I don't know how to describe it to you other than it was a real submarine. It was a little more squared than rounded.
I got to look at this.
And they were smart. We've seen traffickers using semi-submersibles and fully submersible crafts for years now, the official said. Most traffickers make do with homemade submarines, but in 2019, the U.S. Coast Guard seized a self-propelled semi-submersible craft with 6 tons of cocaine on board. And the Colombian Navy also picked up a similar-sized submersible last year with 4 tons of cocaine on board.
Tons of cocaine.
Wow.
Did you see the picture of them? They, I mean, I got to be honest with you. It kind of looks like in New Orleans, we used to fish in the bayous with the alligators. I never forget. I'd hit the alligator's head with my bobber, give it a little jig, and drop right under it, and fish. And it kind of looks like, I didn't fish in pirogues, so don't go there. But just, those like little metal type boats. But this one's bigger and has 3 engines. But are you on the picture yet? This isn't what you'd picture when you picture a submarine.
Yeah, it looks like a boat.
Looks more like a boat, but it can go under.
Yeah.
And deliver tons of cocaine. It's just fascinating.
Wow. So, yeah, countries are killing Americans without even firing a shot.
Yeah.
Just sending tons of drugs over.
And in those tons of drugs, who knows how much fentanyl. I can't believe I got a Dr. J basketball.
Yeah. Are you going?
Do you remember when I had
shoot some hoops with it, Brother Michael?
Well, that's exactly where I was headed. You remember when I had that country rodeo guy, and I didn't know you're not supposed to touch a cowboy's hat?
Yes, I did.
So I thought he wanted to take a picture with me. I said, okay. And so I reached for his hat. I was going to put his hat on.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, we're just going to do a cute little photo op. And suddenly this guy that was talking rodeo with me for 20 minutes suddenly gave me the same look that Dan Mandis gave Mac earlier. Only it looked like I could have gotten violent. And his handler goes, "You don't touch a cowboy's hat." Well, then, like some kind of a moron with Tourette's, I can't stop reaching for it.
Oh, come on now.
and I'm like, and he's just trying, and the guy keeps backing away, and he's like, "What is this guy, nuts?" And then she goes, "I'm serious. You don't touch a cowboy's hat." I just felt so stupid. So now I'm sitting here. Now, I bet 1 million people have touched this ball since Dr. J. But I have such an urge to take it out of its case and touch it and dribble it.
Yeah.
And I will not. I have a basketball court in my backyard.
No, you can't.
As you know. Not like, it's painted and everything with a 3-point line.
Yeah.
And I can lower it because it was from when Nick was a kid. I do have a sudden urge. Do you remember watching Dr. J in the slam dunk contest? He used to win it every year.
Well, yeah.
But to do
Dr.
like
J.
do like a Dr. J sky, is very tempting. But I won't do that. I'm putting this in my man room, and I'm going to cherish it.
There you
Thank
go,
you,
Brother
Shane.
Michael.
I did have, and if Keith Andrews is listening, one of these days we ought to have Keith call in just to confirm. Of course, all Keith ever does is just giggle.
He's kind of like me.
Well, no, I think Keith always viewed me kind of like a farm animal, like a little clown with little horns. So when I talk, he just goes, because he can tell you stories about my family, which you can only imagine walking into my house. I was the nice, sensible, quiet one. So, but we did have a sex ed teacher, Miss Debbie, in 8th grade. And I thought that went south, about as south as a teacher should ever go with kids. Now, I have to make this very clear. In sex ed, I think the longest I survived in sex education class was 42 seconds because I usually get a one-liner in the first 10 seconds, and that was, "DelGiorno, get out. Get out." In this particular day, for some reason, I must not have cracked any jokes. I was in class, and I made it all the way to Q&A, and I thought that went inappropriate. But wait till we get to Eugene, Oregon next on WTN. King Insurance and Associates is an independent agent. That's a big advantage for you. They have multiple companies they can shop on your behalf, not just the one on their business card or their sign. And in our 28 years, we weeded out all the non-competitive companies and kept great relationships with the biggest and best. Maybe that's how they beat my independent agent by 40%. We don't say it. We do it. It takes a couple days. But if you call today and get a royal review, they'll start shopping and they'll come back. I can almost bet my life it's never happened yet where they didn't provide better coverage on home, content, automobiles at a dramatically lower premium. In fact, I'm looking over my list of listeners who called me. The least anyone ever saved was Joe. He saved $700. Not that $700 is anything to sneeze at in this time of inflation. Most, I saved $1,500. Brian saved $1,600. Deb saved $1,800. Lauren, the building, saved $2,300. But don't switch because we did. Switch because you should. You deserve this better coverage, and I know you have use for the money you'll save. Get a royal review and start saving in days. Make the switch to King Insurance. 329-8121. 329-8121 or online at tkinginsurance.com.
I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories, and right now it's traffic blocking your way. We got a crash. It is blocking the left lane of the on-ramp of 40 and 65 westbound to go westbound on 40. And then you still got that crash, right exit lane block, 65 southbound before Trinity Lane. New developments in the Instagram controversy involving Tennessee Lieutenant Governor Randy McNally. Fox 17 says Chapel Hill Republican State Rep Todd Warner is calling for McNally to resign, and he wants the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation to probe McNally's comments and emojis under a nearly nude man's photos as a possible sex crime. Warner calls McNally a predator and accused the lieutenant governor of sexually grooming the young man in the images before that young man turned 18. Right now in our nation's capital, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen telling the Senate Finance Committee Americans can feel confident that their money will be there when they need it, to try to calm everyone's nerves after two big bank collapses last week, Silicon Valley Bank and Signature in New York.
On Monday morning, customers were able to access all of the money in their deposit accounts so they could make payroll and pay the bills. Shareholders and debt holders are not being protected by the government.
Secretary Yellen emphasized what she says is the importance of lawmakers raising the debt ceiling, saying President Biden's ready to negotiate with Republicans, but spending cuts can't be a condition for raising the debt ceiling. War on Ukraine. Poland says it does plan to give Ukraine a dozen MiG-29 fighter jets, which, if that happens, will be the first NATO country to grant Ukraine's increasingly urgent request for air power against Russia since the invasion started. That's the latest news. Weather is next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
So I was just in the men's room.
Yeah.
And, of course, the urinal's not working. So I was using the stall with the kicked-out wall. Somebody birthed a heifer. And I'm just wondering what the person next to me might have been thinking as I was going number one and I was singing, "In the land where drugs were born comes a cocaine submarine." Then I went, "Ah, yes, boys."
Oh, yes, boys. Yeah.
My Tourette's was in full swing. That, and I was just thinking, listening to your story, well, now that we're classifying the lieutenant governor as a predator, surely he'll be released any day, like the rest of the predators. Preds, of course, are going for 4 straight. This was a big conversation yesterday with me and a couple of buddies because, we were all expecting for the season to tank, right? You get rid of all these players. You're playing for draft picks in the future. You're building a franchise, so you're going to suffer a little. You're going to, punt the rest of the season, right? And then they start winning with this ragtag
crazy
all of a sudden.
So they go for 4 straight against one of the worst in the NHL. Sorry, Pete Cristiano. The Blackhawks are in town. 7 o'clock, Bridgestone Arena. We'll be watching at 7 on Bally's. Baker Mayfield, I guess, it's time to start talking bust. He signs another 1-year deal, this time with the Buccaneers. Maybe that'll catch on. Aaron Rodgers, not a done deal yet, but he seems to came out of his little dark isolation wanting to be a Jet.
Yeah, gonna go to New York.
I heard someone call it rich people prison. That's where he was at.
I think Larry King appears to him, too, in his sleep. You're going to be a New York Jet. You're going to watch Robert Tilton fart, and then you're going to be a New York Jet.
Cut off that bun.
March Madness. Well, Ken and there's all excited about Boise State.
Boise State.
So apparently they're fanatical about that E, right? Boise.
It's Boise.
Because most of us just go Boise State.
Yeah, well,
Boise,
and they say Boise. Everybody says Boise. It's
and
Boise.
they want Boise State against Northwestern. Shouldn't be good for Boise State, but we'll see. Houston at number 1 in action in primetime tonight. I'm wearing my Vols hat today. I don't think it's going to jinx them. We're taking on Louisiana Lafayette in primetime at 8:40.
That'll be a really good game. Really good game. Jordan Brown, 20-point per game scorer. He'll be drafted second round. This will be a good game.
Jordan who?
He's the Raging Cajun. You'll see him tonight.
How do you know who plays for the Raging Cajuns?
Mac knows everything about sports.
You and my son Nick ought to sit in room and talk about people.
I would love to.
Yeah.
Dad, you don't know who he is? That's all I hear. I hear it in my sleep. How do you not know who he is?
Matt could tell you who the starting catcher is this year for Coastal Carolina.
No, I couldn't.
Oh, you don't know that?
I'm sorry, kid. You got me on that one.
He'll know by the end of the hour.
Yeah, exactly. I'll figure it out.
Jayhawks will be taking on Howard. That's a number 1. I don't expect a surprise. Texas A&M Corpus Christi gets Alabama on number 1. I don't expect a surprise. And there's a lot of people interested in Auburn. They'll be taking on Iowa from the Big Ten at 5:50. Illinois has Arkansas. Arkansas really impressed me in the SEC
I forgot
tournament.
about the Hogs.
And then the one I'm looking forward to the most, I'm not ashamed to admit it, I think ORU, Oral Roberts University, is going to knock off Duke.
I think it's highly possible.
In a tournament that has no North Carolina Tar Heels. James Worthy, Michael Jordan. Now no one but I have Dr. J's ball.
That's right.
And I'll hold it in my chest and wait for the golden tones of Jim Nance with all the action. And then he'll settle down.
Yeah.
After the big dance, take a walk around the Hogan Bridge and be ready to bring you the Masters. Will this be the year for Charles Schwartzel at the Masters? Or will he know who Jordan, whoever he is from Louisiana Lafayette? We'll find out tonight on CBS. Remember we had earlier in the week the all the brilliant people's birthday? I mean, geniuses. Quincy Jones's birthday.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All
Albert
these geniuses.
Einstein.
Today, just Flavor Flav is 64.
Yeah, boy.
Flavor Flav. Flavor Flav. He, of course, was a point guard for Tennessee Chattanooga. It's 11:08 at Super Talk 99.7 WTN, where the news was brought to you by... Your family rolling. At 11:11, we have sunny skies, 57 degrees. It feels like 55 in Nashville at WTN. The market, Dow's up 126 at 32,001. NASDAQ up 189 at 11,623. And the S&P's up 40 at 3932. All three are in the green. The market is up at 11:11. I'm Michael DelGiorno for Blue Umbrella Medical Center of Middle Tennessee. Dr. Jay Hitson and her team of talented physicians, including an MD, are different. If you're tired of no answers and no relief and just some new diagnosis you have to live with, we're going to get you real answers with state-of-the-art lab testing. Once we have that, we're going to dive even deeper with advanced diagnostic equipment to get to the root cause. And once we've identified the root cause, we're going to treat it with cutting-edge regenerative treatments, and you're going to get actual relief for a change. As I always say, actual health care with real results. What a novel idea. Neuropathy is a great example. It's acute, chronic, and crippling. And most MDs will tell you there's nothing they can do, and it's going to get even worse. Not true. Once we've identified it and we treat it with our cutting-edge regenerative treatments, we're able to stimulate, reactivate, and regenerate the damaged tissue and nerve endings. That brings actual relief. And it's all covered by insurance and begins with a free consultation. So if you or someone you love or care for is suffering from neuropathy, stop suffering and pick up the phone and call and set up your free consultation. Blue Umbrella Medical Center of Middle Tennessee, 610-6937, 610-6937, online at blueumbrellamedical.com.
No.
Sure am grateful you're listening today, whether it's on 99.7 FM or maybe you're listening to an Apple podcast, or maybe you're watching. You're one of the 12 watching on WTN Super Talk TV. It's on Facebook Live, Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube. We certainly appreciate you taking time to make us a part of your day. In Eugene, Oregon, the epicenter of blueness, crazy blueness, a controversial and shocking homework assignment for high school students in Eugene is under fire. Students were asked to write a short story depicting a sexual fantasy. The assignment and other activities got a lot of backlash from parents in the Churchill High School area who called them inappropriate and, quite frankly, shocking. The assignment said you will write a short story of a paragraph or two. I want you to just know that there's a difference between education, obviously, and social conditioning, or education and indoctrination. I remember I was dealing with Audra Sabash with the Mideast Peace Council. You might even remember Audra because it led to a lawsuit, a major lawsuit in California. This is the overt, seen in public side of it, where they were teaching Islam. Now, nobody, God forbid, would teach Bible and Christianity, because that would offend somebody. And in a nation under that particular God, that would never be allowed. But they were teaching Islam. Okay, that's fine if you're teaching it accurately. And that's not an easy thing to do. Let me explain to you. I spent about a decade of my life in a deep dive and in a deep battle over this. And what makes it tricky is, first of all, you're abandoning your God. You're abandoning your way of life. You're abandoning your culture. That's a whole 30-minute lecture in and of itself. And then you're inaccurately entering another one at an inherently higher value, because that's what your new false religion teaches you to do. That's multiculturalism. Just like you have new tolerance, which is intolerance in the name of tolerance, multiculturalism teaches you that every other culture has value and yours doesn't. And then you inaccurately teach your history, rewrite your reality daily with mainstream media, but then through textbooks, common education, and higher education, you rewrite, bastardize, if you will, demonize, if you will, your actual history, to produce kids that hate their origin, hate their country, but are open to all others. And then that meets teaching an inaccurate view. So what Audra Sabash was doing, because Muhammad's a tricky little character. When Muhammad was in Mecca, he was one of 350 religions, and he was very tolerant, very peace-loving. He took pieces of Judaism, pieces of Christianity, and it was all well and good. Then he became a robber of caravans. By the time he got to Medina, you no longer had a choice, and if you didn't choose, he killed you. So you went from one of 365 choices to choose this or you're dead or pay a tax. So Muhammad was in and of himself, peace-loving for a time and taught wonderful peace-loving things. But then later in life was very intolerant, warrior-like, jihadist-like. So today you have a peace-loving Muslim, and I could meet one twice daily, and he could be following the early years and the early teachings of Muhammad. But he's no more accurate than the jihadist who's coming to kill you. Because we used to call it Mohammedism, because it's centered on the life and example of Muhammad. Now, thank goodness in Jesus, you get consistency. From fulfillment of prophecy to childhood teaching in the temple to teaching with Nicodemus to the disciples to people on countrysides. And then, of course, his predictions and then his following through with being turned over, suffering, dying, and resurrecting. But there's a consistency throughout. Now, culture has made it very inconsistent. I don't even know when somebody claims to be a Christian what that means anymore. And it's not just saying, are you a Joel Osteen Christian or are you a John McCarthy Christian? Or MacArthur Christian. It's not even that. I'm not comfortable till somebody goes, yeah, I'm a Galatians 2:20 Christian too. That tells me you get death, burial, and resurrection, and God can't love you any more than he did at the cross, and you can't love him back any more than dying to self. And living, yet no longer living. But with Islam, it's really tricky. So what are they doing in these California schools? Well, kids were taking on Muslim names. They were playing jihad games. They were memorizing the Quran and reciting. I mean, at that point, you're not studying a worldview or a religion. You're practicing it. And when it went to court, even in California, it got thrown out. But only thrown out of California to go other places. And what they did in other places, by the time they arrived in Tulsa in the early 2000s, was they were getting together with teachers' unions and teachers off campus, indoctrinating them and getting them to filter outside of textbook, outside of curriculum material into the classroom. And that's where she met me. And all I did was not trample on any of her rights. I just informed parents of what she was teaching. And then parents showed up at school board meetings. And then a local Islamic leader put a fatwa in my life, and the rest was history. And this is very similar. So at some point, is this teaching sexual education, or is this trying to get kids to practice a morality, a counter-morality of sexuality? So here's the assignment. You will write a short story of a paragraph or two. The story is a sexual fantasy that will have no penetration or any kind of oral sex. By the way, they only care about that in parentheses by saying, no way of passing on a sexually transmitted disease. You will choose 3 items: romantic music, candles, massage oil, feathers, feather boa, flavored syrups. Now this is a scene out of 4 Christmases, right? Dude, I highly don't recommend that. Very sticky. Your story should show that you can show and receive loving physical affection without having sex. Now, some might even try to read into this, well, that's a moral view, right? They're trying to get them to separate sex from affection, or what a bizarre, I mean, it's one thing to teach the male anatomy, the female anatomy, things that are going to come, separate the boys and the girls and tell the girls something they might experience in a few years, separate the guys with the hip PE teacher, but I mean, this is just getting, as I was reading this, I was like, is there some teacher that's going to enjoy reading these? After this assignment got attention, another controversial assignment involving a spinning wheel labeled with various sex acts surfaced in February. When the wheel stopped on one of the acts, the students were asked to write the initials of both the boy and the girl in the class that they would do that activity with. Are you seeing this spinning out of control? Part 2 is next.
Got a crash blocking your way on the West Loop downtown. The on-ramp left lane is blocked from 40 and 65 westbound to go westbound on 40. Still got that crash with the right exit lane blocked, 65 southbound, before Trinity Lane. New developments surrounding Lieutenant Governor Randy McNally's Instagram nearly naked man emojis and comments. That's coming up at 11:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Are we sure he's not from Eugene, Oregon? Anyway, so here I'm doing this story out of Eugene, Oregon, sex ed class at the Churchill High School in Eugene. The first is an essay asking the kids to write down their sexual fantasies. What teacher is enjoying that? That's not instructing. That's not teaching anything. That's somebody wanting to hear stories. Then the second assignment that came to light was a spinning wheel. Imagine this wheel appears in the classroom. They spin the wheel, and it has various sex acts that it lands on. When the wheel stops on one of the sex acts, the students are asked to write the initials of both a boy and a girl in the class they would do that activity with. That's why I did the whole Audra Sabash example. At that point, you're not teaching anatomy, you're not teaching sex education. You're getting essays that make me wonder what teacher's reading these and enjoying them. Now you're spinning wheels, and you have to say a girl and a boy. So you can only imagine the sex acts. It lands on it, and then you go, I do it with Bill and Judy. The principal said the school uses the curriculum in its health classes called OWL, short for Our Whole Lives. The superintendent of the school approved the process for the new curriculum. Jennifer Geller, a former member of the school board from when it approved and adopted the curriculum, said her kids had gone through the OWL programs even at her church. I mean, you got to think, what kind of school is doing this? I remember when I was reading about Audra Sabash thinking, well, that would never happen in Oklahoma. And then Audra Sabash came to Tulsa, Oklahoma. She farted around the wrong town with the wrong talk show host. And when the school started trying to do it all secretly, I filled those rooms with parents, and that ended it, which is exactly what some reasonable parents in Eugene are doing, and I suspect it will end it. But boy, it's got you scratching your head. What kind of churches do they have in Oregon? What kind of schools do they have in Oregon? And no wonder if that's going on in northern western Oregon, no wonder you have this story. There's a popular movement underway to break off a big chunk of eastern Oregon and attach it to Idaho, redrawing the map of the United States in the process. The issue is political. Eastern Oregon is solidly conservative Republican, as is Idaho, but Oregon's government is dominated by liberal Democrats. Eastern Oregonians feel their needs are being neglected since the largely rural population there is way outnumbered by the liberals in Portland, Eugene, and other major cities. According to CNN, Idaho leaders are at least open to the discussion with representatives of the greater Idaho movement. But no wonder there's a portion of the state wants to get the heck out of its own state. And to do it, they got to try to get their state out of their state. And I mean, that's the bottom line. Look, we said there isn't much. I heard Dan talking about this earlier. If you think you can drop your kids off at preschool or kindergarten and pick them up at 18 and expect them to be the same, you might want to think again. This is not education. It's socialization and it's indoctrination. What we're seeing now in the transgender movement, while the left is calling us sinful for trying to stop it, I would call it sinful and child abuse to be perpetuating it. Especially when 9 out of 10 finally figure out their gender by the end of puberty. And it's a little too late if you've had massive medical procedures by then. But education, ultimately, is designed to prepare our kids for higher education, citizenry, and the workforce. How does this fall under that? Spinning wheels? It lands on a sexual position, and you say, who in the... You know how I always say, if you think school is the same as when you were in school, think again? I can't... I was in a questionable Q&A with Miss Debbie in 1978 that I witnessed, which is nothing compared to this. This is the hour in which we live. Now, I will tell you, this is going to have a hard time when parents show up. Audra Sabash had a hard time when parents showed up. Well, I'll tell you, if there's one thing kids need more than anything, time and time again, it's for parents to show up.
.30 on the dot. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. And boy, traffic is just getting better. Well, I should say better tongue-in-cheek by the minute. We got a crash now in Rutherford County. Left 2 lanes are blocked, 24 eastbound right there at Medical Center Parkway. Then in South Nashville, Gore is blocked. That is the Gore block, 24 westbound at the I-40 exit. And then a crash, 65 southbound right before Trinity Lane, north of downtown. And then on the West Loop downtown, you have the on-ramp left lane blocked from the 4065 westbound to go westbound on 40. New developments in the Instagram controversy involving Lieutenant Governor Randy McNally. Fox 17 says Chapel Hill Republican State Representative Todd Warner is now calling for McNally to resign and the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation to investigate McNally's comments and emojis under a nearly nude 20-year-old man's photos as a possible sex crime. That's the latest news. Weather is next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
Hi, I'm Paul Winkler. One of the things you hear me talk about frequently on my radio show that has been going for over 20 years in the Nashville market is that annuity sales are not necessarily a great thing for the end investor. Now, if you go to an investment firm, a lot of times you'll get that. The first thing that they recommend, an annuity. Banks and investment firms recommend these for one really good reason. And many times that reason isn't the best thing for you. It's commissions. It's a huge moneymaker for the investing industry. This is why I think it's so important that when you work with an investment advisor, that they not be paid on commission. It creates a huge conflict because it creates an incentive to sell you things that may not be in your best interest. If you want to learn more about our approach to investing and financial planning, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call. We don't do anything on commissions. Or you can call 615-851-1950.
I almost went 2 days without looking at the Super Text hotline, so I took a peek at it. Did you notice I'm getting rave reviews? You should sing along with the Cars for Kids commercial more often.
Yes.
That's right, 7159, I should. 3180 said, even adding bass didn't help the commercial very much. See, some people notice. You think I'm the only one doing it for my pleasure, right? If you didn't notice, a couple of commercial breaks, I was singing backup vocals on all the jingles. All the jingles.
Well, and that was for all of them to hear. Usually it's just for me to hear. On the
Yeah,
top.
I usually do it down just for you. It's turning out to be a beautiful day. It's not going to last. They're going to start raining tonight, and then it's going to be cold and wet tomorrow. But 59 with sunshine at the Puffy Muffin in Brentwood right now. It's sunny and 61 to the north in Hendersonville. Downtown on Music Row, fair skies, 59 degrees. It feels like 58 in Nashville at WTN. The market's all in the green. Dow's up 147, Nasdaq's up 198, the S&P's up 41. The market is up at 1136. I got to find some wood. Here's hoping it holds. I'm Michael DelGiorno. If you want insanely clean carpets, I highly recommend Zero Res. But I'll make a confession. Traditional cleaners will clean your carpets fine, but they're going to use chemicals, shampoos, and detergents. You're not going to notice, and you're not even going to care. But you should. When they use chemicals, shampoos, and detergents, they leave the residue behind when they leave. It's not that safe for kids and pets to play on while it's drying, and when it's done, you'll feel it. It's crunchy under your feet. It forms a dirt magnet that literally gathers dirt more quickly. Makes your carpets get dirty faster. So do they clean them? Yes. Do they stay clean? No. Do they get paid again? Yes. Zero Res, short for zero residue cleaning, is different. We arrive with science-empowered water. No chemicals, no shampoos, no detergents, no residue left behind. Insanely clean carpets that stay cleaner longer, safe for the kids and pets to play on. It's the healthy way to clean. It's the right way to clean, and by far the affordable way. Our March offer, 3 rooms and a hallway, just $129. Go beyond spring cleaning to zero resification. 3 rooms and a hallway, $129. Don't forget to ask about 20% off air duct cleaning as well. Call 535-9376 for Zero Res, the right way to clean. 535-9376, online at zeroresnashville.com. Bo, 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 bo. Usually I get heckled. Hey, man, you should stick to talking. Your singing's awful. You shoo-weedly-dee, it's Music City. Who cares? I kind of want to end the show where I started it. And it's not just making fun of Joe Biden. And that's easy to do. I'm a talk show host. I can play talk radio if I want to, whether I scream, talk fast, use a higher pitched voice, give the phone number 50 times. I can do that. It is insulting to all of our intelligence. We are almost $32 trillion in debt. What's that going to do? I don't know. You're in no man's land. And what will take your breath away is the thought that when I shuffled into your life in 2000 and, oh my gosh, it's going to be 16 years in a month. Actually, a month from today, 16 years. We were only 10 trillion in debt. Just in the time we've been getting to know each other. Barack Obama doubled the debt from 10 to 20 in a 2-term presidency. Breathtaking. To do in 8 years, and a little of it falls on George W. Bush, in fairness, with the bailouts, but that's breathtaking. But here's the part you forgot. Then Donald Trump and Joe Biden doubled it again. You've gone to 10 to 32,000 and growing. $1 trillion in debt. That's a outrageously sobering thought. But the notion that we're dealing at this level of debt, this level of inflation, heading into this deep of a recession, with wars and rumors of wars being talked about, a fentanyl assault and a drug assault and an open border assault. I mean, I could go on and on and on. And what's a president of the United States doing? He's talking to Comedy Central. And what's he talking to Comedy Central about? His epiphany that Catholicism is wrong, and he's a Catholic, that the way we believed and reproduced for thousands of years is wrong. He wants to discuss his epiphany when he realized homosexuality, gay marriage was just swell.
I wanted to ask you a slightly different question. So my partner Josh and I have been engaged for the last, which really only means that every auntie and uncle that I have is beyond disappointed that there hasn't been a wedding yet. But
Joe forgot to laugh. This is Cal Penn. I did not know Cal was gay. Doesn't matter that he is. Didn't know that he and his partner have been together that long and that they're considering marriage, but they haven't gotten around to marriage yet. Joe has no reaction to that. Joe has no energy, but here comes the question.
But Cardi B is going to marry us, apparently officiate our wedding, which would be nice. But my question for you, Mr. President, is you codified support for same-sex marriage and interracial marriages like ours. I'm curious what your evolution was like on marriage equality, and what the federal government might be able to do to protect LGBTQ Americans, especially trans kids who are dealing with all these regressive state laws that are popping up.
So trans kids, of course, are having to battle all these bigots and regressive state laws. That's the extent of the substance you get from this serious interview from a gay man and a president at a very serious time talking about identity politics instead of all the serious damage the president's done. Now, I don't know if Kel goes ever deeper into identity politics, but you think he'd be challenged by why all of a sudden do we have this big transgendered issue? Is there something in the water, something in the steak, or something in the culture? Are you asking the president when he evolved on this issue, because we'll all eventually have to evolve on your new issue, but we'll all have to ignore that 9 out of 10 of these kids suffering gender dysphoria that has been, I think, as much being confused by adults in an education process or a cultural movement on social media. Is he aware that 9 out of 10 girls and 8.5 out of 10 boys return to their biological gender by the end of puberty, that the confusion clears? Because that should give you some pause before you do dramatic harm to their body, irreversible harm to their makeup. Now, we'll just lump it in. You know, remember the good old days when people used to defend marriage as God intended it, as the Bible states it, between a man and woman? And still, to my knowledge, the only way to physically procreate in a natural sense. So now he's going to ask old Joe, the same old Joe who made up a whole cross and switchblade / West Side story about a corn pop at a pool that we know never happened. When did your evolution take place? And now you're very creative, far better storytelling than George Santos, senile president's response.
Up right now.
I can remember exactly where my epiphany was.
Okay.
Hadn't thought much about it, to tell you the truth. And I was a senior in high school, and my dad was dropping me off. I remember about to get out of the car, and I looked to my right, and 2 well-dressed men in suits kissed each other. I mean, they gave each other a kiss. And then one looked like he was heading to the DuPont building, and one looked like he headed to the Hercules Corporation building. And I'll never forget, I turned and looked at my dad. He said, "Joey, it's simple. They love each other. It's simple." No, I'm not joking. It's simple. They love each other.
By the way, if you look into Cal Penn's eyes, you can tell he ain't buying this. Now, he references 2 buildings. He references his senior year, and he references his father, and he references his epiphany. That's the little facts you're supposed to keep in your head. Now, this part is just conjecture, but does anybody really think in 1959, 1960, 2 men were kissing in suits heading into their business buildings? I mean, that isn't even likely. Even Liberace was in hiding 15 years later. So nobody believes this was even happening, let alone his father's reaction, or his reaction would be, "Joey, it's love. It's just love."
And it's never been, it's never been, it's just that simple. It doesn't matter whether it's same sex or a heterosexual couple. They should be able to be married.
They ought to be able to be married. It's just love. Now, in the same interview, it's sinful, as his mother would say, to protect children. I don't, it's kind of like the Oregon story, right? Not this crazy woman in this crazy owl program that leads to spinning a wheel that lands on a sexual position, and a student in school in the name of education has to say who in the class he would do that with. Both a boy and a girl, has to give a boy and has to give a girl. So he's forced to be bisexual in fantasy. And that's education. That's preparation for higher education. That's preparation for the workforce. That's preparation for citizenry. Protecting kids who are going to, with a proclivity of 80 to 90%, change their mind back to their original biological gender identity. Let's go ahead and maim their bodies when they're small children. That's sinful. But here's old Joe. Joe, it's just love. It's just love.
And I'll never forget, I turned and looked at my dad. He said, Joey, it's simple. They love each other. It's simple. No, I'm not joking. It's simple. They love each other. And it's never been, it's never been, it's just that simple.
Okay, so if it's that simple, your epiphany was in a car with your father, senior year of high school, two businessmen in full suits, kissing in the streets. Then one goes in the DuPont building, one goes in the other building, and you look at your father, and your father says, it's love, Joey. It's just love. It's that simple. It's love. And they deserve to be married. So your epiphany for gay marriage was 1959, 1960. Then why the hell were you saying this as a United States Senator in 2006?
We already have a law, the Defense of Marriage Act, where we've all voted, not where I voted and others said, look, marriage is between a man and a woman, and states must respect that. Nobody's violated that law. There's been no challenge to that law. Why do we need a constitutional amendment? Marriage is between a man and a woman.
So which was the epiphany? She just turning into like the old storyteller. He'll just weave any web he wants on a day on the porch, telling you old stories. Old Joe and the storyteller. Will Cal even care that he sat in the White House and the President of the United States just made up a story and lied to his face? This is the kind of in-depth journalism you get, from Comedy Central. Is Cal so itchy to hear somebody validate his lifestyle that he don't even care? You live in a culture that abandoned truth. So my question today for you is, do lies even matter anymore? Because I don't think corn pop existed. I don't think they were soaking knives in oil cans to get them rusty. And he told a black kid, called him Esther Williams, and threw him out of the pool. And then the gang gathered, and then a black guy gave him a chain. And then right before this chain versus knife fight begins, Joe goes, I got to say something first. I was right to throw you out of the pool, and I'd do it again, but I never should have called you Esther Williams. Is there anybody with a pulse, with a brainwave, that really believes that even happened? Is there anybody with a pulse and a brainwave, including the Comedy Central host asking him, that believes Joe saw two businessmen kissing in 1959 and his father said, Joey, it's simple, it's love. It's just love. Because gay people didn't kiss in public streets in 1959, and not many fathers would have said, Joey, it's just love. So it begs the very personal question. In a culture that's abandoned truth, are lies offensive anymore? Especially when they're coming from a president of the United States who clearly I can prove is a lie, because in 2006, as a senator and about to be a vice president on a ticket and already a vice presidential candidate, is telling you marriage is between a man and a woman, just like Bill Clinton said marriage was between a man and a woman. When did you evolve? Hey, Cal, when did you become so gullible and stupid? I'm Michael DelGiorno for PAI Medical. If you want to feel better about yourself and look terrific, this can be the year you grow your hair back. Now, that's not to assume that everybody who's had hair loss or thinning doesn't look great. Some of you don't care at all. Some of you shave the rest of it off, and I think you look great. Women, that's never the case. Thinning hair and baldness is a great issue of self-consciousness. But if you're curious, if you're self-conscious, I want you to know one of the finest hair restoration facilities in all of America is right here in Middle Tennessee. Brentwood, to be exact, and that shouldn't surprise you. We're an epicenter of entertainment. And at PAI Medical We Grow Hair, we're the only company in the state of Tennessee that has their multi-unit hair grafting procedure. What's that? Well, it's a trademarked procedure that literally gives you more hair in one procedure. What does that do? Saves you a ton of time and money. And no one else has it, and it's backed by the only company I trust. And your looks are too important to go anywhere else. Now, we have the best surgeons, best technology, best results. We have many, many FDA-approved non-surgical solutions that really work. What's best for you is the best part. You sit down for an absolutely free, no-obligation private consultation that, quite frankly, is fascinating, and find out. Natural results from a company you can trust right here in Brentwood. PAI Medical, We Grow Hair. Set up your free private consultation today. Make this the year you get your hair back. 376-6010. 376-6010. That's 376-6010. Online at wegrowhair.com. Well, I always say the outcome of the cultural war will play the defining outcome in our military wars, and we're losing the cultural war. In fact, Patrick said, after this last half hour, all I can tell you is we're living in 2 Timothy 3 times. Well, here's 2 Timothy chapter 3, but mark this, there will be terrible times in the last days. People will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boastful, proud, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, without love, unforgiving, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not lovers of good, treacherous, rash, conceited, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having a form of godliness but denying its power. Have nothing to do with such people. They're the kind who will worm their way into the homes and gain control over gullible women who are loaded down with sins and swayed by all kinds of evil desires. They're always learning, but never able to come to a knowledge of the truth. Patrick, I think you pretty much summarized our final hour, that's for sure. The Matt Murphy Show is next. I'll see you tomorrow morning at 9. If there's a tomorrow morning at 9, so long, everybody. Go ORU! I said it! I'm rooting for ORU. What's happening?